Hello, my name is Ballantyne. I'll be instructing you on how to build a deck in Hearthstone. We're going to start by building a Druid deck and going to My Collection once we've logged in. I'll then pick the New Deck option. It'll bring up an option of which hero I would like to play as. We're going to hop on and be the Druid. Once you get to build a deck, you have two options whether you're going to pick class-related cards or neutral or general cards. A vast majority of your class-related cards will be powerful and useful. However, a good chunk of your neutral cards will build upon your class strengths. You can always start by dragging these over here. If you're playing the iPad version, it's a little bit more twitchy, but it's definitely not that difficult. I'm starting by making sure that I have enough mana to do damage, and that I have the ability to defend myself with these taunt buffs. The cards come in a couple different types. You can either buff a minion, you can buff yourself, you can directly deal damage, you can directly deal healing. You can also cast a minion or cast secrets. Beyond that, there's a variety of other spells and cards which can be done. It's very careful to pay attention to the text as to who's getting what. Also, you have to think about when and where you're going to be using these things. I know for a fact I won't be using this card because my hero generally does not have much attack. Whereas I will be buffing the minions I have. I may not have many of them, but I'm going to have very strong ones. This card right here, Wrath, I like to use a lot because it deals 3 damage of my choice, or 1 and draw a card. Drawing a card is very important and powerful. Very powerful effect. Going back, I could use the Moonfire card for 1 damage with 0 mana. It's a nice card, but limited to only 30 cards in my deck. It's not a card that becomes a top tier. If you look here, you have an important card. You see that it is gold. It is a gold version of an existing card, and it's the Healing Touch, which allows you to restore 8 health. It becomes very important to have that ability. Here you can see I'm picking a few more buff cards. I was considering taking the Savage Roar card, giving my characters +2 attack for this turn. It's come in handy many a times for winning a game, but generally speaking I end up holding on to it longer than I ever use, more often than I need it. For me right now it's about direct damage and buffing minions. About half of my deck is going to be those things. This right here, the Druid of the Claw, is an important card because he can either do damage quickly or he can act as a defender. 5 mana cost is high, but will allow me to it'll allow me to maintain or use him as needed. Beyond that, a Starfire card is useful, and if I have room for it later, I will come back to it. Here's where we pick the minions. It can be easy to pick a lot of low-level minions that can be cast quickly, which is useful when you have a lot of buffs. There's also a lot of high-level minions. If you see at the bottom, I currently have it arranged by all mana costs represented. Let's say specifically I knew there's something I wanted, or there's a range I'm looking to hit. I can come down here and I can pick that range. So if I want to hit the 7+, I get a page full of 7+. The Sea Giant here is a very useful card because a lot of opponents will spawn minions like crazy, and the Sea Giant is very useful. If there's a card I need, say for example I need a second Sea Giant, I can choose crafting mode, and then I can pick the card that I'm looking to have, and I can see if it is possible. Here it shows me that I could build a Ravenhold Assassin with the amount of magic dust I have. The magic dust is generated by disenchanting cards. If I wanted, I could almost build another Mountain Giant, or almost build another Sea Giant. Currently there's no cards I need at the moment, so I will exit crafting mode. Disenchanting a golden card, for example this Deathwing, will provide a lot more magic dust than disenchanting a standard Deathwing. As you can see, the standard Deathwing would only disenchant at 400, magic dust, which is a lot, and cost me 1,600 to build, or my gold, I could disenchant for 1,600 or build it for 3,200. Quite a big difference. Other than that, golds provide nothing extra other than prestige. Back to building the deck. Some cards have what's called a death rattle, which means that'll happen when the card dies. For example, this leopard gnome is excellent for getting out quickly and easily, and then using him to attack and down, say, something that has taunt, and still do damage to the boss, or to the opposing character. Here we have a taunt character, which means that he has to be attacked before you can attack either the opposing player or before the opposing player can attack you or any of your other minions. This one has a battle cry, which means that whatever the battle follows the battle cry term happens as soon as the card is played. It deals 1 damage. You get to choose where it goes, which can be useful for downing something without having to lose this card. After this, it just comes down to what do we feel like using. If I have a lot of taunts, something like this Young Priestess will be good because it builds up a lot of health and makes the defense much easier. Enrage here is once the character takes 1 damage, this effect will go into play. Others have buffing, which allows you to buff the characters for whatever reason, left or right, or yourself. Charge means that it can attack as soon as it's played. If you look back here, we have Wind Fury, which means it can attack twice each turn. Stealth means that the card can't be targeted until it deals damage. It can still be affected by large area of effect spells. Most of the effects can be seen just by mousing over the card and seeing what it tells you the effect means. So if you're unsure, you can always check those. This Fairy Dragon is a very useful card because it can't be targeted. If I was using a lot of minions, having the Knife Juggler would be excellent. He's great for mage decks, but right now he doesn't do me much good. Beyond that, I'm looking at cards that have taunt. Silence is useful because it can get rid of whatever the effect is in the area at the bottom of the card. This is a good card if you can heal it, because it allows you to draw quickly. Beyond that, right now it's just a matter of picking what fits my deck best. I tend to stick with a lot of taunt cards, especially these mid-level 3s. They allow me to have something out there and save me time until I get what I need, or to protect a minion that I'm in control of. This card right here is an excellent card to have. It gains +1 for every card you play. It's nearly unstoppable, and whatever your opponent has becomes immediately focused on it. Other cards that are important here, nothing's jumping out at me. The Wind Fury is useful. Unfortunately, that's a high value, low attack card. It's great for focusing your opponent's attack on it. I will use it because I have a lot of buffs, but it's generally not a great card. Some people may argue that, and that's what's great, is everybody has their own way of playing. This card right here is excellent because it allows you to taunt with a huge health value and a relatively low casting cost. The problem is it produces no casting value. Twilight Drake, again, gains 1 health for every card in your hand. An excellent choice for a defensive card, and with all the buffs I have for damage, can be useful. 4 is a great attack. A lot of people are tempted to give the +1/1, but it requires a lot of work before you can play that card, and it ends up not getting used often. I prefer to use cards that have genuine immediate use and can be used in a variety of situations, rather than when a certain situation allows for it. This is a legendary. It can only be used you look at it, it can only have one of these per deck. Very expensive cards, very hard to come by as far as magic cost to make them. They all have very, very useful abilities that go with them. Beyond that, I'm thinking that with the 2 that I have remaining, I'm going to need to go back and get some more low-level minions. So I'm going to start back over here, go back a few pages, anything too low, if it doesn't have a great ability, isn't going to be much help to me. This card is great for getting it out early. However, I do feel like I have enough tanks. Say there's a card I picked and I no longer want. We use the Fairy Dragon, for example. I decide that I don't want that in my deck. I just easily pull it out, or I can right-click on it as well. Or right-clicking on it will bring me to that card, whereas left-clicking on it will get it out of my deck. So going back to the Fairy Dragon, putting it back in there. Right now it's a little tough to pick and choose what's going to be going out. This is generally a useful card, but I have enough taunt already. Usually a card that has a detrimental effect, like for example give your opponent a mana crystal here and charge, is a low casting cost card, but it has an advantage to the opponent as well. It's usually a high damage. So let's see. I'm going to pick cards now that allow me to cast them quickly and have a good effect, like this guy has a good death rattle. Now that I'm all done, I will close the deck, and if I'd like, I can always name it by opening it back up, clicking on it, and renaming it. Also, you can see that I have the stats that are available for how many cards of each type I have. Generally speaking, you want to have it look like a standard bell curve. Thank you, and I hope this was informative as far as deck building.